Hello there, welcome back to the High Elves Abridged. In the previous part, we were finishing off our war against Gundabad. We used a lot of human meat shields to make some good progress, and then ended up fighting one massive, decisive battle against their final settlement and army, where we won with enormous losses, destroying their faction. And immediately after, we're turning our attention south to Isengard, our next target. And our conflict in the south started sooner than expected because during the very next end turn sequence, we had this offer of battle. It looks like the Dunedin are attacking the Dunlendings right outside our southernmost settlement. I didn't think I was at war with the Dunlendings, but apparently I am, so we have the chance to be involved in this fight. And I thought, well, we might as well, because of course we can persuade the Dunedin to do most of the work, and the Dunlendings aren't that strong as a faction. This was a bridge assault battle, and it looks like the Dunedin have brought a good army for it. They've got a couple of ballista units and some catapults. So that means while the enemy are defending the bridge, they just stand there getting absolutely pounded by siege weapons and losing a bunch of guys. And that's going to aggro their AI and make them cross the bridge, meaning then the Dunedin can do a bridge defense. We can help out a bit. I'm not going to commit my melee troops, but these archers can stand on a hill behind the fight and rain arrows on in, including our special Dunedin ranger archers with their magic steel bows. So we'll just rain arrows on this blob. Going to be getting plenty of hits since they're so densely concentrated. And that may also be the case for the Dunedin siege weapons. The ballistas are able to snipe into the side of the blob where there's an exposed little bit. I'm sure the friendly fire potential here is quite high, but maybe they're grabbing more kills on the enemy than their own troops. Looks like they're cutting it fine. Our archers are certainly going to be killing our own troops, well, quote unquote our own troops. The troops on our side that I don't care about. That's all fine. Here we are with things a bit further along where we've killed most of the enemy. The balance bar's now looking good. Still raining arrows on these disgusting humans. Humans of any kind are worth killing to us dark elves, so this is all good. The only guy who wasn't in the blob was their commander, who was spotted off to the side of the bridge. Hit them with a rain of arrows and took them down, killing a few allies along the way, so that's all good. And with the defeat of that commander, the small remnant of the blob routs. That's a pretty good win. We lost 0 troops and the enemy army is dead, or the newly made an enemy army. I didn't really care about fighting the Dunlendings, but we're doing it now apparently, and indeed at the start of the next turn it does say here we're at war with them now at least. I've also grabbed alliances with the Wood Elves and the Dwarves, so that might come in useful. As for this Dunlending thing, luckily it's not a very big deal because they only have one settlement. It seems that the Dunedin and perhaps even Isengard have been moving up all over the place and they've just lost everything. So that's all good. Now we go back to assembling an army ready to move out against them. We're not quite there, but you can see I did have a whole bunch of troops squirreled away down here for a rainy day just in case I got attacked from this direction. And we can now start bringing them together to form an army to move out. I've also got this other reserve army of our western territory. I put them here in the easternmost part of our western territory in case Enidwaith or Isengard came up from that general direction. And now we can use them to attack. There's nothing particular for them to do around here because Bree currently occupy a lot of the territory around us. But what we can do is move through their territory down towards the Londare region where that river is towards the sea. Because Isengard do occupy that area, so eventually we'll come back to that as our troops find stuff to do. And here's our other main push. Glorfindel has taken all of the stuff in the north to form a new, pretty decent looking army. And this army is going to move down towards Lothlorien to try and do something about their recent fall to Isengard, I believe it is in fact. So we'll have to be at war with them by the time we get there to do anything. In the meantime, I've got one little battle to do up here with Elrond because I wanted some of these troops here in this scrappy army to go and follow Glorfindel as backup. But because there are some remnants of Gundabad standing on the road, I actually can't leave in that direction. So I thought let's move out and actually fight this battle. It's a roughly balanced engagement despite us having so many more units than them, just because our units are in a totally trashed state of condition. We got a decent map though. We were able to deploy way above the enemy on these huge cliffs, so we rain arrows down upon them after a lot of shuffling around to get technical line of sight. This was actually less effective than I thought, and this removes my suspicion that in the game firing at stuff from above is more powerful, because the arrows hitting didn't really do anything. We were barely getting any kills. It's because Gundabad tend to have quite decent armor stats even on things like the archers, so they don't die very easily. Instead, we're going to have to move some archer cav around behind them to shoot at point blank range, and I also jostled around my ballista for a long time, and finally they were able to get line of sight on the enemy. One big miss to start off with, but then this sniping here appears to be effective. We grab some kills from this. The arrows are eventually killing a couple of enemies, and once we've bothered the enemy enough by killing a couple of them, they run up the mountain to fight us, and here's a little battle for us to do. We've got a nice choke point, so we can just sort of stop them there and fight them downhill. My horse archers are very uselessly shooting arrows into their archers. Our horse archers just are too dead to really do anything in this situation. Anyway, I can send some cav around to outflank to our right. My archers I thought would be useful here, but actually they're not doing very much at all. The enemy archers are shooting me, but I can't see them or get an arc of fire on them because of the angles on the hillside. So not much happened, but our melee line was able to rout the enemy's melee attacking troops. There's no general in this army, so their morale isn't very good. And with that, we're going to have this in the bag. We follow them down the hill and charge into the enemy's archers. The archers soon rout in the ensuing melee as well, and we can conclude this battle with only 11 casualties. Not too bad. So all this achieves is now Elrond can move past where the rebels were, and we're going to have him move down the edge towards Dol Guldur's territory, where we can also get access to the edge of Rohan and stuff, where I'm sure Isengard also have territory. So we'll just see what comes of that move later. Back on our front lines with the Dunlendings, we're nearly ready to go. We've got more troops being spewed out in the area. We're just about reaching, by the way, our maximum troop capacity for our economy. We're no longer making money. You can see we actually have like no money in the bank right now. So we do need to take a bit of territory if we're going to keep making troops. Luckily, the Dunlending territory is not particularly heavily defended, and over the next 2 turns, I move in and lay siege to it. They did have a decent army, but I think they're distracted fighting the Dunedain to the east, so that was all good. I actually left them under siege. I could attack in this turn, but I wanted to wait for this other army to catch up, since we've got plenty of reinforcements we could pile into the same battle. So they're going to come around via the road through the Dunedain territory in order to potentially take out any enemies in the way, but we didn't see very much. Then in the next turn I ruined everything by doing that. The enemy had moved over a few troops, and I thought, oh, I'll just cancel the siege and do a siege draw out instead. But they retreated, and that ruins everything because now it's not a siege draw out. I think the siege draw out trick only really works when the enemy have a massive garrison in the town, so they've got a decent balance bar. You can't really force it on barely garrisoned places. So we end up just restarting the siege and bringing over my reinforcements to restart this attack in general. There's also this little wave of Dunedain attacks. The first time I said I wanted to be part of the attack, but one didn't happen. Then the second time we've got this super one-sided battle that's just an auto-resolve, but I manually resolved it anyway because the enemy's faction leader and heir are on the field. So if we do this manually, we can ensure they die, and that might be enough to take out the Dunlending faction. That was the plan. Obviously we don't have to do very much in this case, because by the time we've arrived as reinforcements, the battle's pretty much over. We're just going to plow in with the odd cav unit and stuff to make sure we grab those general kills. There's me routing the first unit we came across. I went on to find like one guy in a melee crowd and take him out with the cav. Then I just sat around because the other enemy general was also in a melee crowd, and I was like, maybe our allies will eventually kill him. They did, after a long time. So yes, we finished the battle with no casualties. That's what we like to see. And this did actually defeat the Dunlending faction. That's not all that good because we pretty much had them dead already. All it does is turn their garrison in the town into rebels, and that changes what units they are as well. So now we still have to go on and fight them again anyway. But I think this might be a bit easier than the fight we were set up to do against the Dunlending version of this garrison. Anyway, as you can see, the balance bar's pretty good, and we've even got a few allies helping out, so I felt, let's go and just auto-resolve this. Luckily the result was good, so we don't have to go back to the save and do that manually. We'll sack the place, and that's the end of the Dunlendings. With this, our southern border now does actually touch Isengard, so we're going to be using this as a springboard for our full invasion. We touch them both to the south, and the west right here. Here we are at the start of the next turn when I'm setting up, ready to do something. I sent most of my troops to the south to sit on the bridge to Isengard, and Isengard have an army there themselves as well, pretty suspiciously. I'm going to split that force up to meet up with these reinforcements so that we can have one stack going west and one stack going south, pretty much. There is a somewhat damaged Isengard army defending that place to the west, and of course to the south they're standing right in front of us with this stack. For now we're not going to do anything. We're not actually at war with them yet, we're still setting up for it. So we just wait until the next turn. And now we are going to want to go to war with them, because from this point onwards we're just going to be waiting around for nothing really. The stack that was in front of the bridge appears to have walked over to the west. I might be able to attack them here, but I didn't really want to, just because there might be something better we could do with our army. As for our western army, well, we've only got one thing we can do really. We need to unite the two parts together and go for that settlement. The two groups are too big, so I need to select a few units to leave behind. Once that's done, we march on and attack the settlement, and that's going to start this war. So here we go. This is the final war of the High Elves in Middle-earth. Inside, lots of stuff, but those units must be damaged because they don't have much coloured in on their flag, so it's not so bad. As for the guys left behind, I'm just going to have them in reserve here. They're going to wait for more reinforcements to show up and start making a new army in the future. As for the army on the bridge, I didn't know what to do with them because it would be ideal to just advance and take a settlement, but I also don't want to leave the bridge open while that stack is around because they might immediately cross it and start causing some issues. In the end I thought let's go for a slightly aggressive strategy and move off the bridge, but only to set up an ambush that will probably be on the enemy's route to the bridge. So if they do try to cross it, we might ambush them. If they don't, we're a bit further forwards and can keep advancing or something. Over at the Lond-Dare place I mentioned, at the west end of Isengard's territory, my troops have arrived and I'm setting up near the point on the river where you're allowed to cross. But as you can see, there is lots of Isengard stuff here spread out between various stacks. So I'm not going to do anything for now. I'm going to wait, since I've also recruited another half stack of stuff up here. So if I hang around a few more turns, I can turn that group down there into a full stack, and then we'll be more ready to invade. So we'll come back to that another time. There is one fight we can do right now though, because Glorfindel was set up on the edge of Lothlorien, and now we're at war with the Isengard troops inside. We can strike, and as it happened, in this turn they deployed some troops outside of the town to just stand there, setting up a siege draw-out situation, so we can just go for this right now. I was checking their stats here to refresh my memory. I have played the campaign as Isengard. They're a little bit worse than Gundabad maybe. They do have some good units, but they also do tend to field some trash that we will easily be able to kill. I wasn't able to do anything fancy with their reinforcements because they came onto the field just on the flank of where the main army deployed. So we allowed them to link up and walk at us, and the walking is quite useful because while they're walking we're hitting them with arrows, and they do have lots of things like the Reavers, which don't have shields and don't have that good armor, so our archers can grab a few kills there. Was just clocking the location of the enemy's general ready to come in on their left flank and try to take him out. And yes, all we're going to do is stand here, let the enemy come at us, and then do some cav micro behind them. But you can see they have plenty of units that didn't really commit to the fight. Many units did come to attack my cav, and that's kind of annoying. But here it's going to work to our benefit because their general is coming away from the battle to chase after some of my cav. So we're just going to lead him a bit away, maybe out of archer range or something, and then our cav can just go all at him off in the corner somewhere, hopefully grabbing us a kill. In the meantime, I'm struggling to make our way through the enemy's archers because they do have some good archers, and this cav attack on the back of their stuff isn't doing very much. Need to get out of there before their spear guard get involved. We are going to struggle a little bit with the main line here, because like with Gundabad, they do have some good units that are a match for ours, so we are going to see some serious losses. We killed the captain of the first army. That might help out a little bit, but not really. Still looking for that main general kill. He's in that blob of cav somewhere. A couple of enemy Uruk-hai warriors came over to help out a bit, so I'm going to cycle charge there to avoid taking too much damage. I've got my horse archers accidentally fighting the enemy's pikes in melee, the worst possible setup, so need to avoid that. That's exactly the thing I said we needed to be careful about, so clearly I wasn't careful enough. At least the enemy general is nearly dead, He's down to 3 troops running about on his own at the back, so we can charge back on in to try and finish him off. The only issue is the general himself having so many hit points that killing the entire unit doesn't really get you anywhere. They certainly can't rout. So now we have to wait for the general to actually die somewhere. Eventually it does happen, but by this point we have actually lost quite a bit of our front line. And we also see that not much changes after we kill the general. Some of their troops are still on eager morale. I think what's happening is the Uruk troops, who have very high morale due to being fearless as a racial trait, just kind of don't care about the general dying. Some of the other stuff goes, like the lower quality Uruk trash and some of the half-orc troops they have. But really, the main fight appears to just go on as it was happening before. That means we are going to be doing this the hard way. I'm going to be committing all of my archers into melee to try and grab some flanks and get some morale debuffs that way. And of course we can do some cav attacks. I did get one particularly good cav attack, despite me constantly complaining about these cav charges not going very well. It was a case where we killed half an enemy unit with a nice rear charge. That even causes them to rout, so we can finish them off there. Deadly stuff. Eventually the battle's going to grind down to an end, but the fact that it was a grind means the result's not that good. It's claiming to be a heroic victory, but we lost 400 troops and most of those guys will have been our melee line, so it's the usual problem. We lose melee troops quite quickly, and this army's rapidly becoming not very useful to us as a result. At least we did do the siege draw out, so we can recapture the Wood Elf capital here, or the Lorien capital. The nice thing about this place is at last we're capturing somewhere that actually has elven culture. That means if I just slap down a basic recruitment building, we can start making new units here right away. Well, only like 2 units, and then we have to wait 10 turns, but this is better than the usual nothing ever. So it's going to make a suitable forward base for further operations. The Dunedin ask us to help them out with a little battle near that town we have under siege. Might as well. I was a bit hesitant to execute the captives here because I thought maybe we could turn this into a siege draw out because the retreating troops will go and stand next to the town. I execute them, but a few survive anyway. Then another army comes down annoyingly and fights them again. However, they still survived the battle, so they're now standing in a siege draw out situation. We could cancel the siege and fight everything in the field, perhaps with some allies. However, then another army comes down and finally finishes that little group off. It does seem that auto-resolve's pretty bad at actually killing enemies. At the start of the next turn, well, we've got another standoff situation going on. My whole ambush plan that I mentioned didn't go anywhere, so I went back to just defending the bridge, and this big army's sitting ominously nearby, and it would be really good if they did attack the bridge, because we could get a decent battle and just fight them in a blob. So I'm kind of waiting for that to happen. Back over here, we can now potentially make this siege attack because we do have a decent amount of Dunedin stuff standing around. So I came in to make the assault. However, there's also a hidden Uruk-hai force on the other side of the town in the forest. So that means the balance bar's not actually that good. And while we could certainly win this battle, I didn't want to fight it. I think in retrospect fighting this would have been a good idea. But I just thought surely something better can come about. In particular, we leave the town under siege, the Dunedin fight the army outside separately, and then all of us make the siege attack, so I can mainly just have the Dunedin run in and kill themselves. We just need to take this without taking losses because we can't deal with taking losses overall. I end up doing this instead, and this plan fails immensely. I wanted to try for the siege draw-out method, but first I wanted to leave one unit behind besieging the town in case it didn't work. However, what actually doesn't work is my plan to leave one unit besieging the town. Even though the unit isn't selected there, it comes with the army when I move away from the town. I feel like you can do that. I've even done that before in this campaign, so I'm not sure what the problem was. But in the end then, while I can do that siege draw out by the looks of things, it won't pull in many allies, so I didn't want to do it, and I thought, well, I'll just go back to where I was before in the end. It's a very conservative strategy, but it is just because I want the Dunedin to die first. We really don't want to miss out on the chance to have them die instead of us, because after all this is gone through, we have to go on and attack a whole bunch of other places. There'll be some chances for us to die later, so that's why I'm playing this so carefully. We do have some reinforcements we can call upon. I can't really afford to be upkeeping them, but I can deploy a half stack from Mythlond and they can use our boats. to come all the way down to the Londres front. That's going to take a few turns, but eventually it will have some more stuff there, so that will be a novel gimmick. Now back over at the Lothlorien front, I had moved on a little bit, hoping to march down through the Wood Elf territory and get to Isengard. However, Isengard are coming up to me at the same time. There's a stack on the road heading south, and there's also about 2/3 of a stack currently besieging a nearby Dwarvish settlement. What I could do here is turn back and help out the Dwarves by attacking that army, but again, we don't want to. We need to keep our guys alive for other stuff, so instead we're going to play it safe again, just going to move back to this bridge and defend our territory only. The Dwarves may be able to deal with their own problem there. Because Glorfindel's army isn't actually in good condition at the moment, I decided to not have Elrond go towards Rohan, which was the original plan. We're going to take his even worse army and combine it into Glorfindel's to together make one decent army to continue on with. That's the overall plan. Back on these front lines, my dream of getting a bridge battle still hasn't come true, and the big army that was standing in front of my bridge setup appears to have moved over to the west there. The thing I was worried about though is that in the previous turn there had been another army near this crossing. I couldn't see it anymore, so there's the risk it's moved and hidden itself right next to where that siege is going on to the north or something like that. That's why I'm looking around constantly with spies hoping to see it, but we didn't. Back at this siege, the situation isn't much better than before, because their main army has ended up not standing close enough to the settlement. I don't know what the Dunlendings are doing with their turns, but what they're definitely not doing is clearing out all the enemies in this area. They're just kind of standing there, but in such a way that they can't properly reinforce, with all these small armies blocking each other's routes. So overall, not impressed. Our allies are not sacrificing themselves in the way that I require, and because of that I again decline doing what is probably a doable siege assault there, just because there's too many reinforcements. We want it to be easy to start with at the very least. So we're going to place our faith in them one more time and try to move on. But during the end turn sequence, something strange happens. At Londres, it seems that Bree have crossed the river with a big army, and Isengard are attacking them. I had the opportunity there to reinforce in their battle from the other side of the river, and even though I said yes, it didn't happen. There was no battle. However, the Bree force just completely died, being annihilated in an auto-resolve that ended up not involving us apparently. But what did happen is me saying yes caused me to teleport to the other side of the river and be surrounded by Isengard armies. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here. It's possible that it was a night battle or something and it accidentally invited me when I wasn't allowed. Maybe that's why I wasn't in the fight just now. When the enemy attack me, I try out a trick someone mentioned in the comments, or a few people mentioned, where you just retreat manually instead of using the retreat button on the campaign map. And this causes you to retreat further than you usually do, so we run away and get some good distance away from Isengard. Therefore our army isn't surrounded and pounded to death, and we avoid complete disaster, but the death of a full stack of allied troops there means that stuff on that front line is going to be a lot worse for us, even when we do form up and try to cross ourselves, which will be in a couple of turns once my reinforcements arrive. So we're going to end things here for this part. Overall, it seems like Isengard have us in check across all of our points of advance. Things aren't going to be as easy as I thought, and there are a lot more Isengard troops around than I thought. So we need to be super careful, be as sacrificial of our allies as possible, and try to grind this one forwards if we can. Let's see how it goes in the next part.